is the Vintage RPG Podcast, your source for the best in classic and contemporary RPGs. With your hosts, Hambone and Stu.
Welcome to the Vintage RPG Podcast, coming at you again from the clubhouse hidden somewhere in the swamps of New Jersey. I'm John Hambone McGuire, and with me, as always, is the founder and publisher of Unwinnable. When he said, Hambone, you got to know when to hold him, you got to know when to fold him, I had no idea he was talking about his pocket square, Stu Horvath.
One time, my wedding, I wore a pocket square.
And you look so handsome.
You're very kind.
Yeah, I feel like I made and granted, I'm all like hopped up on the cough syrup right now. I've got a cold, so I'm like, did I make a gambler joke on this show once before? And if so, I got to do something wildly different. But yeah, I've been workshopping that all day, and that's how I was able to get through it in just one shot. So we've got a really cool guest today. We've got Dillon Morton here from Mirage Merchant to talk about Bloodsport Gambler, which is going live on Kickstarter September 5th. So the day after you listen to this episode, unless you're listening to it in the future in 2024, you can still back this. It goes live tomorrow. So Bloodsport Gambler is what we're here to talk about. Dillon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. This feels really surreal. I'm a longtime listener, first-time caller here. So yeah, glad to be here and can't believe,
You're so excited.
I really am. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes our job easy. I'm glad I got a haircut today for you. And I didn't really get it for you, but I look nice, and I'm presenting myself very nicely for this evening because you're so excited to be here and we're excited to have you. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about Bloodsport Gambler?
Yeah, Bloodsport Gambler, it's for one or two players. You're betting on foul pit fights where you're basically trying to get out of harrowing debt, and you need to pay a syndicate of money lenders, and survival is the most important thing. That's ultimately the goal there. It's all set in this otherworldly, old school fantasy setting beyond the confines of reality in the city of Gulmora.
That's a great name for a city, man.
It
That's
is
a great name for a city.
So the first thing that I thought that was super interesting about this game is that it's not about the combat. The combat's happening, and you set up the combat that's happening in the blood pits, in the fighting pits, the horrible, awful. I love the art. I'm looking at the actual combatant cards. We'll talk about that in a second. But I like the fact that the action of the game is oblique, that basically you're setting up the fights, and then literally the real nitty-gritty of the game is kind of trying to discern what's going to happen in the fight, and then betting on it and hoping to make your money. Like that's actually the game. The fighting itself is sort of to the side. And I think that's really interesting as a design thing. What made you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's kind of the hook of the game, where when that came through, this idea where you aren't the fighter, there's so many situations where we are the hero, or the rogue, or the main character of a story going through, and you have agency, you're able to swing your sword, you're able to take action. All of a sudden, when I was, dungeon master or judge for role-playing games, and all of a sudden I'm having to play kind of these side characters, it was this really fun experience of like, what is that like to have very little control of an outcome, or what can you do as a desperate gambler to influence this fight, right? Like, you aren't the hero. You have to try and sleuth, scheme, and sabotage to really kind of have any impact to maybe fix the game, Tanya Harding style or otherwise, and something about that felt really fun and compelling. I think kind of this balance of chaos and lack of control, but then also you can try and find influence, and how do you mitigate risk and kind of play those odds was a really kind of fun thing to explore with this game. So.
See, it's such a cool concept to me because, we've all seen movies, read books, comics, seen the stories where you got the one dude who's like, I am underwater and I need to find a way out of this debt, or like Big Tone's going to break my legs. So there's no way I can make this amount of money legally by the time, tomorrow comes, and if I still want to have kneecaps. So I'm going to go to the track. I'm going to go to the casino. I'm going to bet all on black. And there's that energy and that vibe of really throwing caution to the wind and trying to do what you can to take control in the eye of a chaos storm, and then just seeing kind of where the chips fall where they may. Like there's a lot of intensity to that kind of thing. Because at any minute, you're either going to win or you're wearing crutches for a while.
Oh, absolutely. I think one thing when designing this game that really was important was how do you create desperation, right? Like, how do you drive someone to the brink to, have to maim a fighter or extort their former trainer, or even, the classic bedchamber scorpion, dropping that in, what will drive you to have that be a reasonable or unreasonable, action to take, right? And a lot of that was just kind of having those debts pile up of that desperation really being a driving factor for kind of being forced into those actions, and really kind of taking on the lens of that character in this story.
I've played this. I have the game. You sent me a copy. That was very nice of you. And I played it solo, and I can attest, it immediately becomes desperate. And this might also just have been my solo playthrough, but everything went wrong, like constantly. Like I was betting badly. Like the guards got involved very early. Like basically everybody was. Basically what happened was, if I was in over my head and I went to the track and tried to fix a race, this was what would have happened in real life. I would have gotten caught immediately, and it would have just went very badly. And that drama was very good, but the core mechanic of the betting I thought was really interesting, because I had never played a game where betting is a core mechanic, and I don't know of any games that where betting is a core mechanic. Were you inspired by any particular games in the history of board games that I just don't know about?
I feel like there's definitely some gambling games. I mean, other than, poker and those kind of classics, but
there's the narrative of the betting, because right. It's not like it isn't like poker. There's all the narrative that's going on with it, and the way you can fix the fights, but it still does come down to a bet. I can't think of a board game that I've played where you are betting on the action in this way that's sort of distinct from an actual gambling game.
Yeah, there's some games out there like Camel Up where you're putting down bets and on camel racing, and that's really fun and compelling and has some mechanics like that. But yeah, honestly, a lot of the inspiration for this came from role-playing campaigns where I was running one where there was a pit fight scenario. It was all based in Lankmar in, the city of the Black Toga, that I ran for about a year and a half. And the entire party was, for a couple of sessions, they were trying to figure out how to rig these fights and how to get involved and that kind of thing. And the gambling, was taking place in our campaign sessions, all kind of around this pit fight scenario. And so, yeah, trying to kind of take that and figure out, like, how does that exist within a board game and that sort of thing was a lot of fun.
Did you resolve the pit fight in the role-playing game in a way similar to what became Bloodsport Gambler?
Kind of. The party really took it off the rails, as usually happens. But I think there's like wild animals being released that they later befriended, and yeah, their whole gang was kind of instigating, and they were really trying to get the whole kind of the slums and in the city, there in Lankmar, rallied behind a specific fighter, and a wizard was starting to kind of weave their way into their mind to control them, to help kind of start fixing fights. And at that point, yeah, they were able to kind of escalate into even, larger, higher regard with the Thieves Guild and everything like that. But they kind of had to prioritize other things. But yeah, it was a blast.
Now this doesn't feel aesthetically like Lankmar though. Who's the artist and why is he so messed up? Because the fighters are so messed up. It's such a collection of weirdos and creeps, and I love them. But like, I get like the Warhammer or like the fighting fantasy, like mutant chaos vibe very strongly looking at these cards.
Oh, for sure. Oh, that warms my heart to hear, getting those kind of influences and feeling that from the art. Yeah. Eric Rady is a friend of mine where I met him, helping play test his board game that he was designing at the time. And we've been gaming for years ever since. And yeah, he was in that campaign, that I was talking about earlier. And very early on when designing this game, I kind of, reached out to him to help with the art. And he dove in even further than the art with helping with development and play testing, all sorts of things. But yeah, once, he started kind of illustrating some of these fighters, that was the first step there. I would kind of come up with some prompts, or I had a list of names, like Grave Filler. Actually, that was a name of a sword in a campaign from one of my characters when I was role playing.
It's a great name.
That's a great name.
Yeah, Putrid Pig Beast. Some of these, starting with the list and being like, oh, that's fun. It kind of invokes. I mean, when these pit fighters are almost more like wrestlers, kind of in this persona you can give them, and so seeing them come to life with his illustrations, I mean, it was so much fun to see that happen and to unfold, and for the world of Gulmora to come to life with his each drawing.
Are you good at the game? If I squared off against you, would you beat me every time?
I mean, there's no sure bets in Bloodsport Gambler. That being said, I think there's some strategies that I've found that do end up helping a lot. It's a lot of kind of trying to mitigate risk and figure out how to bet on the underdogs, how to upset that, when do you go for it? That definitely helps. That being said, it's designed in kind of balanced in a way where it's never a sure thing, or there's enough kind of random events where you still need to have your strategy. You still need to, find ways of kind of responding to what's going on, where taking certain actions at a certain time or holding that. But yeah.
So it's not rigged for the designer. That's good to know.
No, luckily not. I mean, if you memorize the cards and know what's coming next, it might help. But a lot of it really comes down to when do you play the cards and who do you bet on and when. I think timing is everything with that. You get about 9 rounds to make it out. You can choose, which payments you make first. One tip I would do is pay the least first. If you're paying the money lender syndicate the lowest amount, you have more coin, you can bet more. Some people I've seen in play testing where they started, with the 8 coin payment. If you don't have coins, you can't bet them. So
that was my initial thing, was like put in an extra down payment, or like an extra payment for my mortgage down. Like I was just like, I'll start at the top. That didn't work out for me. I definitely ran out of money.
So what led you to making it a 1 to 2 player game? Did you ever have any kind of ambitions to make it for multiple players other than a head-to-head kind of event?
That was something early on that I tried to kind of find the scope. It actually started as just 1 player.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I just feel like there's a lot of space in gaming in general, I think, where there's painting, there's certain, reading, there's ways to engage with the hobby, as just one person. But a lot of times when you're trying to kind of roll dice and dive in, it's, sometimes like 4 or 5 people is really what is required to get things going. You have scheduling, things like that. And so being able to have a solo adventure where you can dive in at any point and still have a story unfold. And there's a system, someone mentioned Fight Fantasy earlier. That's a great example. I think there's a lot of other. Nate Hayden just developed or designed some solo games as well. What was it? House on the Borderland. That really, really kind of reached out. I was like, wow, this is a full story that I can play in between, gaming with friends and others. So that was something I felt like was a fun space to explore. 2-player kind of happened organically, where all of a sudden you have hidden information from each other, and that kind of fun dynamic there was really cool to kind of dive into. And I think multiple people have kind of brought up the possibility of having more people join in on the game. And I think for me, the biggest thing is the amount of cards, making sure people aren't shuffling too much. Really trying to scope and focus this game where it doesn't bloat too large or things like that, especially as kind of a initial game for Mirage Merchant. That being said, I think it would be really fun to try. I haven't tried this yet, but I would love to give it a go, is combining multiple copies. And so you have the same 3 fights that you're betting on, but you're able to expand the amount of action cards. That way you're not shuffling too much. Everyone can have a full hand, and you're able to, have more tokens and things like that. So there might be a way. It'd be a little bit slower. It wouldn't be as streamlined, but you might be able to gamble with more people.
That's cool.
It's super elegant as a single player game, and there's like meat to it where I want to play it a couple more times and kind of figure it out on my own. I'm intrigued by how a second player could complicate things, but I actually think at least starting out, the solo game is complicated enough. Like, I'm going to screw it up myself. I don't need somebody else screwing it up for me. Like, I feel like 2-player is like the advanced mode.
Ooh, that's interesting. I think it definitely changes things. You're trying to gauge what are they trying to tamper with or sabotage, right? And trying to kind of get a sense of their intent. All the while, yeah, you're also, if they get caught by the guards, the risk of future actions go up until you bribe the guards, and it can bring that back down.
Yeah.
Guards can be appeased. So sharing that level of like the guard level, right? Like that's a really interesting dynamic too, where if the person I'm playing with, all of a sudden they get caught, I'm at a higher risk of actions, illicit deeds that I'm like in the act of doing, is really interesting. That really helped kind of balance everything there. But it is definitely more factors to consider when placing bets. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, that is a good way to put it. I don't think it's actually harder conceptually. I feel I feel like I'm just like I just need to get a handle on the solo so that I have a better idea of the factors that are at play before I introduce the additional factors of the second player. But I do like the idea of like multiple players. That could get really weird. Really.
On the flip side of that, it's pretty cool, especially coming out of the pandemic, having something that you could actually have that user experience just by yourself, or even just like with the person you live with, is a pretty cool thing. I got very into the game Unmatched during the pandemic because it was a way for the wife and I to play head to head and still be able to play a board game and have that great board game experience. So, I think there's a lot to be said for having a cool solo experience and having a cool, we're really going head to head because one of us does not want to walk away with our knees broken. I mean, both of us don't want that, but like, there could be only one, as they say in the Highlander. But, that's a cool concept. I think it's something that people shouldn't overlook when they design games, is the ability to actually play it with one or two people. So that's a pretty cool thing. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Kickstarter? Because you are launching a Kickstarter on September 5th where you can procure this game. Yeah,
so we launched on the 5th. I'm really excited for that. I filmed a video in my basement that we'll have first and foremost. Even had some Dungeons and soundtrack that I recorded down there as well. Anyway, yeah, on the Kickstarter, we'll have copies of the game available for the first 20 backers. We'll have these Chanel patches that my sister actually gifted me for Christmas. And we have 20 of these. Yeah, they're orange, they're fluffy, they're really fun. So I figured, why not for the first 20 that back it? I think we probably got to get to about 50 units in order for it to be successful. And yeah, from there, hitting the ground running. So
you're going to kill it. You're getting 50 units. You're going to kill it. I mean, it just, the aesthetic of the cover alone is going to pull people in. It's just so gnarly and lurid and good. You're gonna do great.
Yeah, I mean, it's dangerous art for a dangerous concept. I love it. And you are going to be shipping internationally, correct? To be shipping all over the world.
Yeah, so we'll be shipping internationally. We have insurance and tracking for all those as well. The best part too is that the game is already complete. So it's been about 2 years of designing, developing, figuring out the manufacturing partners, and as soon as this Kickstarter completes, I'm hoping, we're just making the order for the parts and I'll be assembling them. I'll be helping ship those out. So I'm hoping, 1 to 3 months, I'm giving some padding there, but
always get padding
on doorsteps pretty quickly after.
Now that's such a cool thing, man, because obviously you always want to give padding, because when it gets to you is the fun part, because then you get to, make the assembly line, you can put it together, you have control. And then the person at the post office sees you coming, and he's like, "Oh, son of a bitch, he's back." The Pirate Ship does make that a lot better. I don't know anyone at Pirate Ship. We're not sponsored by Pirate Ship, but shout out to Pirate Ship. As an independent RPG creator myself, you have made my life easier and made my postal service worker a lot less stressed when he sees me coming. So kudos to you. But yeah, that's such a cool thing. It really is a good vibe to go into a Kickstarter with, knowing that the thing is done, except for actual manufacturing. So I have a lot of confidence in that, man. If I could give you one little piece of advice, drink a lot of water, get some sleep the night before, and make sure you wake up knowing that, when people back this, they know that they're actually going to get something, because you don't have to go back to your apartment and go, okay, now I got to write the fucking thing. Like it's done. So that's very cool, man.
Yeah, no, this thing is done. I have what is basically a retail copy. It's cool. It feels good. It looks good. It is a complete game. It's great. I wish more Kickstarters were run like this because it's like really satisfying to have it happen so quickly, I think.
Yeah. So one thing with this Kickstarter too, that I forgot to mention earlier, we really wanted to kind of simplify it and focus it on just making Bloodsport Gambler a reality, right? Bringing it to the mortal realm. Things to help do that, to have a faster fulfillment was, not having add-ons, not having certain tiers like wholesale or things like that. I cannot wait to bring those things to our web store, things like that after this Kickstarter. If it succeeds and the game exists, I would love to do t-shirts with some of the fighters on it, things like that. That'd be so much fun. Even I've started recording a soundtrack, so doing that on cassette would be that would be a dream. But yeah, that being said, this Kickstarter is really just trying to kind of have it be for single copies of this game and going from there. That way we can assure that we can, fulfill it and ship it in time.
Straight to the heart of the matter.
Yeah, man, like a fighter, running lean and mean, ready for combat. So you are thematically, checking off all the boxes.
It's a total package.
I love it. All right, so Dillon, you got any final thoughts on Bloodsport Gambler?
Risk it all and help us conjure Bloodsport Gambler into this mortal realm. Yeah, I just feel like so excited, and all of this just feels really surreal to have it be at this point. Been a long time coming. I'm just excited for whatever's next. And yeah.
Well, very cool, folks. Bloodsport Gambler is coming to Kickstarter September 5th. If you are listening to this on Monday, September 4th, it's tomorrow. If you are listening to it over the next couple weeks, how many days are you running your Kickstarter for, Dillon?
30.
All right. So if you listen within 30 days of September 5th, you can still back Bloodsport Gambler, but definitely boogie on down to Kickstarter. Click get notified if it's the 4th. On the 5th, definitely pick up Bloodsport Gambler. We will have links to the Kickstarter in our stories. I will be throwing up a link in my Instagram stories when it goes live. So just keep an eye out for that. Dillon's been great chatting with you, and we are really looking forward to Bloodsport Gambler, September 5th on Kickstarter. So, Dillon, before we let you go, where can people find you on social media?
So on Instagram, we have Bloodsport Gambler Game. You can find us there. Let's see. Also, we got, we're on Board Game Geek if you want to search us on that. Bloodsportgambler.com if you want to go on the interwebs. And lastly, for Kickstarter, actually, I don't know the URL for that, but if you search Bloodsport Gambler, you can definitely find us. So.
Yeah, I mean, the URL for Kickstarter is going to be kind of ridiculous to list off in a podcast, especially when people are driving. Don't crash your cars, folks.
It'll be in the show notes. You can look it up when you get into a safe place.
In the show notes. Well, Dillon, thanks again so much. Bloodsport Gambler, September 5th on Kickstarter. This has been another amazing episode of the Vintage RPG Podcast. Stu, where can people find you on the internets?
They can find me on Instagram at Vintage RPG, where I post things like Bloodsport Gambler. I haven't posted that yet, but I'm gonna.
It'll be in a story because the actual feed is booked out until like 2025 at this point.
Yeah, basically.
But hey, in 2025, you're going to really like what you see in the actual feed for Bloodsport Gambler. You can find me on the internet at John McGuire RPG, pretty much everywhere, on the Instagram, on the TikTok, on the Twitter for now, on the Blue Sky, I think, on the TikTok as well. But I am posting more because I do have something to promote. If you're listening to this, Friday, October 13th, The Hotel Exorcist from 3-2-1 Action Games is coming to Kickstarter. You get to play a team of exorcists as you go to a resort town to help them get rid of some unwanted guests. So The Hotel Exorcist, October 13th on Kickstarter. Anytime you see a link that has something to do with me, except for the pictures that I posted my wedding, you'll find a link that'll get you notified for when we go live. I don't know. I might use my wedding photos to also get you to get notified. If you're going to be clicking on it anyway, why not? If you like the show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Your reviews really do help other listeners to find us. And if you really like the show, why not become a patron to patreon.com/vintagerpg. We got a lot of cool stuff going on there. You get to hear the episodes before anyone else does. They come out at some point on Friday, depending on how late we record them in the week. You get a killer Discord community that we love to be a part of. For the $3 tier and above, there are games that I run monthly. I run different games every single month. Stu at the $10 tier runs a West Marches game that's ongoing. You get a behind-the-scenes look at Still's book, which is called
Monsters, Aliens, and Holes in the Ground, a guide to tabletop role-playing games from Dungeons and Dragons to Mothership. Hey, I did it.
You did it. I'm very sick today. Thank you for not making me work for it. You also get a behind-the-scenes look at 321 Action, patreon.com/vintagerpg. So for Stu Horvath, I'm John Hambone McGuire. May the dice always roll in your favor.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Every review helps other listeners to find us. The Vintage RPG Podcast is a ham-fisted production. Music by Dega West. Art by Schaefer Brown. If you like the podcast, you should also consider becoming a patron at patreon.com.